This story begins with a group of people suddenly startled as they discover a massive iceberg in the middle of a snowy biome. As they get closer, they notice a mysterious woman trapped inside the iceberg. The team leader quickly orders everyone to contact the secret court, but shortly after, they hear strange noises coming from within the iceberg. The woman claims to be a former god who had been asleep for thousands of years and trapped in the iceberg because of it. She then requests to meet the best player of this era. The scene shifts to a reporter in a helicopter, observing various games taking place. All around the world, people are watching what is called the Games of the Gods. This is where we meet our main character, Faye, a handsome young man with glasses, carrying his suitcase as he walks around the city. Everyone seems captivated by the gods game that's happening, and this time, 3 gods are involved simultaneously, something quite rare. Although many players participate in this game, very few become winners. Faye then enters a building, and everyone who sees him appears shocked. A girl from Overflow named Miranda greets him, reminding him that it's been 6 months since Faye was last seen. It turns out Faye had disappeared for half a year to search for someone who once taught him how to play games in his childhood. Miranda then invites Faye to the 17th floor to discuss something important. In the elevator, Miranda tells Faye that there's someone she wants to introduce to him, the former god who was previously trapped in the iceberg. A few years ago, this former god was playing a game of chase with humans before eventually hiding at the bottom of the sea, where the gods slept for thousands of years. The god told Faye that he would be trapped in the iceberg, but fortunately, Faye is the best player of this era. Miranda asked Faye to keep an eye on the former god, as Faye was the perfect person for the job. The god also explained that in the past, spiritual beings known as gods descended to Earth, though the reason for their presence is still unclear. Miranda wanted Faye to investigate why this god was still on Earth, especially since the god had the power of immortality. When Faye entered the room, it was obvious that the god was very fond of games. Faye found a pair of dice and threw them, predicting the outcome before they hit the ground. This puzzled Miranda, who thought it was just a lucky coincidence. Suddenly, the god came out of their room, making the atmosphere tense. Upon seeing the god, Faye immediately remembered the person he had been searching for all this time. Miranda then introduced Faye to the god named Lealetia. Miranda explained that Faye was the first player to achieve 3 victories in the Games of the Gods, a feat that had never been accomplished before. This earned Faye the title of the best player of this era. Miranda also added that from now on, Faye would be tasked with watching over Lealetia. However, Faye still seemed shocked because the god in front of him was a perfect replica of the person who had taught him how to play games as a child. As Faye became lost in thought, Miranda snapped him back to focus on his task. As Faye tried to introduce himself, Lealetia quickly flew towards him, startling Faye. Lealetia cheerfully suggested they play a game to introduce themselves. The name of the game was Self-Intro Memory, where each player had to match 2 identical cards before they could ask a question. Each card had a question on it, and when you matched 2 identical cards, your opponent had to answer the question honestly. Lealetia then shuffled a deck of cards, but Faye calmly pointed out that the deck needed to be reshuffled. The reason was that Faye had memorized the position of every card in a short time, which surprised Lealetia. Lealetia praised Faye for not using his skills to gain an advantage, even when playing against the god. To make the game more challenging, Lealetia added a new element. She made the entire deck of cards float in orbit at different speeds. This caused the card locations to constantly change, making it impossible for Faye to memorize them. In another room, it turned out that Miranda was secretly observing the game between Faye and Lealetia through hidden cameras placed in the room. The game began, with Faye taking the first turn. He picked 2 cards, but unfortunately, the topics of the cards didn't match, so the turn passed to Lealetia. Lealetia bent down to focus more on the cards in front of her. Noticing Lealetia's slightly odd posture, Faye joked that he would stop playing because the posture looked a bit dangerous. Lealetia, laughing, jumped onto a chair to choose her cards, but she still failed to match them. After a few rounds, Faye finally became the first to match 2 cards. The cards he matched had the word hometown on them, and Faye immediately asked Lealetia about her origins. Lealetia explained that most gods come from the same place called Element. It's where the Games of the Gods are held, and only selected humans can enter through a special door. Miranda then explained more about the Games of the Gods. According to her, these games were created because the gods were bored. They chose a few selected humans and gave them an awakening, which granted them superpowers or magical abilities. These powers made them eligible to challenge the gods. However, these abilities could only be used in Element, and as a reward for winning a game, players would receive a portion of that power to use in the real world. If a player lost 3 games, they would lose their advantage. On the other hand, if a player won 10 games, they would complete the Games of the Gods and receive a special reward from the gods, a reward that remains a mystery to this day. The game continued, and Lealetia managed to match 2 cards that read name, so it was Faye's turn to introduce himself. After a few rounds, Faye noticed something interesting. There was a wild card in the game that allowed them to ask any question they wanted, opening the door to uncover deeper secrets. A few seconds later, Leoletia successfully matched 2 blank cards, which turned out to be the wild cards as mentioned earlier. Leoletia immediately asked Faye a surprising question. What are your true intentions for wanting to get closer to me? Since the rules of the game required every question to be answered honestly, Faye had no choice but to reveal everything. He truthfully explained what he had been planning and what his motives were behind all of this. It turned out that Leoletia had known everything from the start and simply wanted to test Faye. Leoletia admitted that she had liked Faye from the beginning and decided to trust him. She even gave Faye permission to call her Leslie from now on, a sign of a closer relationship between them. Before the game ended, Leslie asked Faye what he would have asked if he had gotten the wild card. Faye revealed that he actually wanted to ask why Leslie stayed on Earth, and why she chose Faye to be her overseer. Leslie explained her reasons honestly. It was all because Faye was the only beginner to achieve 3 wins in such a short time since his debut, a feat that had never happened before. Leslie admitted that she was no longer a god and wanted to finish the gods' games alongside Faye. It turned out that Leslie came down to the human realm because she wanted to play and compete with humans. She also revealed that her plan was to complete 10 games with Faye so she could become a god again. Hearing this, Faye was immediately intrigued, as Leslie had just revealed the great reward for anyone who completed the gods' games. The gods would grant any wish without limitation. Leslie then pulled Faye out of the room and led him toward the gate of the games. They stepped inside and prepared to take on their first challenge together, a game called Hide and God Seeks. At that moment, the Titan God appeared and began causing minor destruction around the building, with debris falling and almost hitting the participants. When a large chunk nearly fell on Leslie, she easily destroyed it, reminding Faye of her status as a former god. However, Leslie admitted that she couldn't use her full powers, making Faye even more cautious about her condition. 10 minutes earlier, after they passed through the portal, Faye and Leslie arrived at a place resembling a city. There, they met other participants, including Asta, who Faye immediately greeted. Everyone was surprised by Lesia's presence, but she quickly reassured them that she was on their team. As the atmosphere began to calm down, a small creature named Meep suddenly appeared, enthusiastically welcoming all the participants. Meep explained that they were now in the territory of the Titan God, and the registration for the game was officially closed. Bald, one of the participants, immediately took the initiative and instructed his team to start live streaming the event to the entire world. They were all ready. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Miranda was anxiously watching the broadcast, hoping Faye could fulfill his mission for humanity and win the gods' games. At that moment, Meep started giving instructions, while Bald reminded everyone that the Titan God was famous for loving combat games. However, a girl quickly analyzed their odds based on previous matches against the Titan God. With the current number of participants, they only had a 14% chance of winning. Even so, Bald remained hopeful, especially since they had Leslie on their side. But then Meep dropped a huge surprise. This time, the game wasn't a typical battle. It was a chase game among the gods. Faye immediately questioned the rules of the game, assuming it was just a normal chase in the confined city area. However, Meep explained that while they couldn't leave the lit areas, it didn't mean they had to be tagged to lose. There were other ways to lose the game. With that rather shocking explanation, Meep quickly wrapped up the instructions without giving detailed conditions for winning or losing. Even worse, they were only given 5 minutes to run before the game started. However, the impatient Titan decided to start early. The Titans swiftly began chasing them, running as fast as lightning, causing all the participants to scatter, trying to hide in the shadows of the buildings. Faye and Leslie found themselves with 4 others, including Asta. One of them suggested hiding inside a building for safety. Asta agreed and started moving toward the building's entrance, away from the group. But Faye quickly stopped her. Just as the words left his mouth, the Titan appeared out of nowhere, heading straight for Asta at terrifying speed. Asta didn't even have time to escape. Surprisingly, Asta's body suddenly turned red, and when magic started attacking her own teammates. Seeing this, Faye immediately realized one thing: anyone caught by the Titan would become its ally. Meep had mentioned this rule earlier, but no one expected it to happen so quickly. Even though Asta tried her best to tell them to run, she couldn't fully control herself. She accidentally tagged 3 of her teammates, trapping them in the game. The Titan quickly took advantage of this situation, defeating one of them and adding to his number of allies. Now, only Faye and Leslie were left, and they knew staying there was no longer an option. The Titan was busy chasing other players, but Asta, who was still half loyal to the human team, continued hunting Faye and Leslie. As Faye assessed the situation, he realized the number of players had drastically changed. From 18, now everyone was caught in the chaotic game. However, Asta wasn't fully absorbed by the game yet. Only half of her body had turned red. That meant there was still hope for her. Faye and Leslie exchanged glances, no words needed as they quickly devised a plan. They decided to trap Asta and stop the magic controlling her. With quick movements, Leslie touched Asta and pulled her back to their team. Seeing this work, Faye realized they could bring their friends back if they acted fast enough. The Titan resumed its chase, but this time Faye ordered Asta to hide, leaving only him and Leslie to flee from the giant god. As they ran, Leslie began to notice how well they worked together. There was a certain chemistry in the team that made their movements in sync. Faye, on the other hand, was enjoying the challenge. For Leslie, watching a human fight against gods with such determination was truly enjoyable. Faye recalled the past, a girl he once knew, someone who always played just for fun. But now, even though this game was thrilling, Faye was determined to win. In the middle of their escape, they suddenly found themselves surrounded by 15 players who had already been caught. They ran toward the nearest building, seeking shelter. Leslie swiftly destroyed the connector to the neighboring building, hoping to slow down the Titan's allies. However, the Titan kept pursuing them, and the situation became more critical. They needed a more solid plan to win. While reflecting on their situation, Faye realized something. To win, they had to turn the tables and make all the captured players join their side. Leslie immediately understood what Faye meant, sensing a hidden rule in the game that combined elements of tag, hide and seek, and other secretive challenges. With a clear strategy in mind, Faye and Leslie decided to split up. Leslie would lure the players out of the building, while Faye headed to the rooftop to execute their final plan. As their plan unfolded, the Titan viciously destroyed the surrounding buildings, intending to end the game by trapping them. Faye realized they needed to finish their plan quickly before it was too late. Even though the Titan managed to tag Faye, it seemed to reduce the human team's chances even further. However, with his power to avoid death, Faye remained on the human team, defying all odds. Despite the score being 16-3, Faye calmly told the Titan that the game was about to change. Faye explained the hidden condition of the game. According to him, this city was like a game board where the gods team gained control by tagging players. The Titan could recruit players it had tagged, just like in a game of Reversi, where each move could flip the situation. The destruction of the buildings, Faye clarified, marked the end of the game, much like filling up the entire board in Reversi. The team with the most pieces left on the board would be the winner. Faye continued, revealing that when someone was tagged by the Titan and another player switched teams without being tagged, it was because they were in the right position to flip their allegiance, following the rules of Reversi. Faye's main goal was to distract the Titan, giving Leslie and Asta the opportunity to act. According to the plan, Leslie and Asta emerged from their hiding spot. With a carefully thought-out strategy, Asta threw 7 participants against the wall, lining them up as planned. Leslie then touched 2 of them, flipping the entire line's allegiance, changing the score to 10 humans versus the Titan. When the final building collapsed, signaling the end of the game, the humans emerged victorious. Even the Titan graciously accepted defeat. As everything returned to the human world, Miranda celebrated this historic win, marking the first human victory against the gods in 35 days. This game of tag broke the record for the number of viewers worldwide. Miranda then expressed her gratitude to Faye for his contribution to the victory and asked about his experience partnering with a former god. Faye didn't hesitate to praise Leshia's incredible abilities and how their synergy as a team was crucial to their success. However, humbly, Faye emphasized that their success wasn't due to his past status but rather the strong teamwork they had built together. Miranda reminded Faye that he used to always play alone until they met and became a team. She reflected on how strong Faye had been even back then, but now, with a team, Faye was finally able to pursue his dream of completing the God's game. Then, Leslie asked Faye about his motivation for winning this game. Faye answered that his goal was to find someone from his childhood, a mentor who had taught him how to play. Even though Faye always lost, his mentor would always give him a smile and encouragement, until one day, she disappeared. Faye's love for the game was the only clear memory he had, and he still hoped to thank her. Leslie found Faye's wish intriguing but wondered if Faye had any clues other than his love for the game. Faye only remembered his mentor's red hair, which reminded him of Leshia's hair. But it definitely wasn't Leslie, since she had been trapped in ice for 3,000 years. Even so, Leslie hoped Faye would find his mentor one day. Faye reflected on this, feeling that meeting someone so similar to his mentor might not be a coincidence. United as partners, they were now determined to conquer the God's game together. That night, Miranda realized they needed more teammates to increase their chances of winning the God's game. She explained that every team should have at least 10 people to have a better shot at victory. Fortunately, there was no limit to how many humans could join, and they would only face one god in each match. However, Leslie wasn't too keen on working with others. Meanwhile, Faye decided to look for teammates by using online forums, and he also started searching for players near the registration booth. Faye remembered a team captain named Ashlyn, so he called him and suggested joining forces, mentioning their recent victory. At first, Ashlyn felt honored and agreed to join, but when he learned that Leslie was also on the team, he immediately changed his mind. Ashlyn revealed that Leslie had a bad reputation in the past. There was an incident where Leslie overreacted to a team mocking the God's game, which ended up causing a few people to be hospitalized. Although Ashlyn found Leslie funny, her bad reputation made him refuse to join, which naturally left Leslie feeling disappointed. Despite feeling let down, Faye remained persistent and continued to search for another team. He then found a team led by a skilled game analyst who offered valuable strategic support. Faye quickly contacted the team captain, Yuki, and proposed that they join forces. At first, Yuki seemed enthusiastic, but as soon as he learned that Leslie was on the team, he suddenly hung up the phone. Confused, Faye finally asked Leslie why Yuki reacted that way. Leslie eventually revealed that she had accidentally hurt Yuki during a training session in the past. Even though Leslie insisted that she meant no harm and had tried to apologize, Faye could sense some unease in Leslie and accused her of lying. Leslie was forced to recall the incident and explain how she lost control of herself at that time. Despite the ongoing rejections, Leslie sincerely expressed her gratitude, as her curiosity about humans was growing, and she hoped to interact with them positively. Seeing their struggle to find a team willing to accept them, Faye suggested that they form their own team. They then set out to recruit members, focusing on finding people with valuable skills. They then spotted a girl named Pearl, who had teleportation abilities. Faye was impressed by her skills and considered inviting her to join the team. However, Pearl surprised them by expressing her intention to resign as an apostle. Leslie, not wanting to see Pearl give up so easily, took a bold step and started to burn Pearl's resignation letter, hoping it would change her mind. As Pearl began to feel confused, they tried to convince her that they really wanted her on the team. Faye even offered something sweet. He promised to treat Pearl if she would listen to their proposal. A delighted Pearl finally agreed to listen and began to introduce herself. She mentioned her unique record, 1 win and 1 loss. Faye was even more confused because Pearl wanted to retire after just 1 loss. He then asked Pearl about her decision to retire. It turned out that Pearl felt guilty about her team's defeat in the last match. In that game, Pearl's job was to protect the team leader, but she accidentally switched places with the captain while he was being chased, which ultimately led to their loss. Even though Pearl had incredible abilities to teleport and switch places with others, she felt those skills were useless. She believed she was incompetent because she still made such a big mistake. Leslie, who disagreed, tried to convince Pearl that it was okay to make mistakes and invited her to join their team. Leslie believed in a supportive environment where mistakes were seen as part of the learning process. However, Pearl remained firm in her decision to retire. She then teleported away before Faye and Leslie could persuade her any further. Leslie suggested letting Pearl go, but Faye wasn't ready to give up just like that. He was determined to find Pearl and help her overcome her fears, not wanting that fear to define her future. They eventually decided to visit Pearl's dorm, but when they arrived, they found the door unlocked and the room empty. At first, they thought Pearl had moved out. However, Faye accidentally caught a glimpse of Pearl at the top of the building, which of course shocked both him and Leslie. Pearl then explained that she was actually just using a portal to enter her room, which is why she forgot to lock the door. In the middle of their conversation, Pearl shared that she had only become a player last year and had always admired Faye's team. She felt she wasn't competent enough to be a good teammate, especially considering how great their skills were. As they chatted, Faye noticed a gift in Pearl's room that was apparently meant for her former teammate. Seeing this, Leslie couldn't help but give a little lecture, reminding Pearl that the game was supposed to be enjoyed, not filled with guilt and blame. Faye added some encouragement by suggesting that Pearl look for a chance to redeem herself. He proposed that the 3 of them join Pearl's old team for the next match, believing in Pearl's potential that had yet to fully shine. Although Pearl was hesitant, Faye kept pushing her to give it another try, assuring her that he wouldn't stop her if she wanted to leave after the game was over. Moved by Faye's relentless spirit, Pearl finally agreed to follow that suggestion and rejoin her old team for the upcoming match. As they prepared, Miranda quietly admitted that Faye had broken a few rules to make this happen, which certainly added more pressure on them to succeed and redeem Pearl's mistakes. Despite the tension, Leslie calmly reassured Pearl that this was the perfect opportunity to make up for past errors. They stepped through the game gate, but suddenly found themselves falling from the sky. Shenlong, the god known as Ouroboros, the invincible god of despair, suddenly appeared before them. Faye, instead of being scared, felt incredibly excited to face this challenge. He quickly realized they needed a quick solution to survive the fall and suggested using Pearl's powers. Unfortunately, Pearl's teleportation ability was limited to a distance of 30 meters. They decided to use Lexia's ability to slow their fall. With teamwork, they managed to land safely. After reuniting with Pearl's former team, Faye immediately sought out any useful information. However, Orvin, the captain of Team Inferno, delivered bad news. 4 players had been eliminated. 3 of them didn't survive the initial fall, while the other was captured by a creature known as a Leviathan, rumored to be waiting below to devour falling humans. The harsh reality of the game began to make some participants feel anxious. Losing here could mean losing their status as players. Despite the increasingly tense situation, Orvin tried to motivate his team, reminding them that the game was being broadcast globally and victory was still within reach. However, Faye started to feel a sense of uncertainty among the players, and doubts about whether they could really defeat Ouroboros began to surface. But Faye's spirit was rekindled when they heard that the objective of the game was to force Ouroboros to say a certain word. As the group ventured deeper into Ouroboros' massive body, they were trapped in a snare set by the god. Meep then revealed that they would remain trapped until they could find the forbidden word they had previously mentioned. Despite their repeated efforts, they still struggled to remember every word said during the game. Finally, Faye recalled one word spoken by Lei and Pearl as they fell. Ouch! That word was enough to free the group from the trap. Once freed, they moved to another part of Ouroboros' body, and Faye realized something intriguing. The god didn't understand human language. Faye then concluded that the condition for victory wasn't to make Ouroboros speak the forbidden word, but to awaken a sense of pain within the god. Unfortunately, all their attempts to hurt Ouroboros seemed futile. In her desperation, Leslie unleashed her full power, creating a massive gust of wind. Sadly, the impact of her attack swept away several participants, making them targets for the Leviathan, which, of course, added to the players' fear. After seeing the consequences of her actions, Leslie immediately apologized to the group. Captain Orvin, who was also there, quickly accepted her apology, acknowledging her status as a foreign god. However, they soon realized that their attacks had no effect on Ouroboros. Amid the confusion, Meep suddenly remembered a secret rule that had been forgotten. Meep explained that certain actions could trigger an event that would activate the second secret rule. As the tension grew, Pearl felt terrified by the Leviathan following them. Seeking safety, Pearl ran toward Faye. However, Faye gently reminded Pearl that her goal was to prove her potential to Team Inferno. Leslie encouraged Pearl to face her fears and stay strong. Hearing those words of encouragement, Pearl became determined to try and promised to remain focused. Together, they started searching for Ouroboros' weak point and finally found a scale on her tail that stood out compared to the others. Pearl was eager to exploit this weak spot, though Faye worried about relying on an assumption without solid proof. However, Faye recognized the importance of testing it and ordered Pearl to attack the weak spot carefully. Pearl caught Captain Orvin's attention and struck Ouroboros' tail, causing it to glow in reaction. Unfortunately, Pearl failed to retreat as instructed, unless he had to protect her from Ouroboros' lightning-fast counterattack. As a result, the strike killed several players and the nearby Leviathan. Seeing the danger caused by Pearl's actions, Orvin scolded Pearl for her recklessness. Pearl tried to apologize and explained that she only wanted to help, but Faye reassured her, emphasizing that she would support her no matter what. Faye assured Pearl that even if she was eliminated during the attempt, she wouldn't hold it against her. Faye believed that Ouroboros' tail wasn't meant as a trap. As a god, Ouroboros was too powerful to be satisfied with just a few eliminations. Faye felt certain there had to be a way to achieve victory, possibly related to the first secret rule Meep had mentioned. Despite Orvin's disagreement, Faye argued that Ouroboros could have eliminated more participants if that was truly her intention. Leslie also acknowledged suspicion about the attack, noting that hundreds of lights seemed to miss their targets. Orvin then questioned Faye's intentions. Faye confidently replied that the next step was to uncover the second secret rule of the game. Although Faye wasn't entirely sure about the situation they were in, Faye calmly pointed out that they had plenty of time since there was no time limit in this match. Meanwhile, Team Inferno started losing patience and considered quitting the game, which was allowed without penalty when facing Ouroboros. Tensions began to rise as Orvin reminded the team of the consequences of losing, especially due to Pearl's mistake in a match 6 months ago. That memory triggered an emotional reaction from the teammates, and they vented their anger at Pearl, who felt guilty and deeply ashamed. Leslie, feeling angry at the group's treatment of Pearl, initially threatened to send them back to the real world. However, she quickly calmed herself and explained that her anger wasn't just because of the fight with Pearl, but because everyone in the group was blaming each other when they were supposed to be having fun in this game. As the tension grew, the team members found it odd to see Leslie seemingly enjoying the chaos. However, Leslie realized that Pearl wasn't the only one feeling pressured. It turned out that Faye was also more engaged in the game than anyone else. Faye continued to reflect on the events that had taken place, especially about the activation of the first secret rule involving Pearl. After considering everything, Faye decided to activate the rule again. Faye warned about possible casualties but still invited the others to watch the match through the transmission, promising victory in the next opportunity. Faye then ordered Leslie to attack Ouroboros' tail with full force. The attack resulted in a massive burst of light, wiping out all players except Faye, Pearl, and Leslie, who tried to shield her two friends from the ensuing counterattack. The sudden reaction from Leviathan to Ouroboros' attack indicated that the game might return to normal, or perhaps it would never be the same again. The situation was far too chaotic for them to be ready for something like this. The crazy priest Hadler, it turned out, had other plans behind all of this, and the conflict surrounding the ongoing lockdown was finally revealed. All the cunning players began to feel the tension. In the middle of this moment, Meep appeared, cheerful, excited that someone had finally reached the final stage of the game. Their final task? Make Ouroboros feel pain and say the forbidden word. Meep looked like a lettuce, terrifying everyone. With Meep's overzealous enthusiasm, as the game officially ended, Ouroboros appeared in her human form and, with a tone of respect, admitted her defeat. She gave Faye a special reward, a shard of the eye known as the God's Crown. This crown possessed incredible power, allowing its wearer to challenge Ouroboros whenever they wanted. In addition, Ouroboros also gave Leslie the chance to challenge her again in the future. Leslie realized that the next game would need to be 100 times harder, and she challenged the 3 team members to participate again. It wasn't just a challenge, but also an opportunity to prove themselves in a more intense arena. The scene then shifts to a girl named Nell Reckless, who woke up from a shocking dream about a game. Nell found the TV still on, broadcasting Faye's victory against Ouroboros. Inspired by Faye's gameplay, Nell decided to dedicate her life to following in his footsteps. On the other hand, Leslie expressed her frustration to Miranda after finding out that they wouldn't be able to participate in their game division, even though they had recruited Pearl to join the team. Miranda explained that there was a massive player waiting list, thanks to Faye and Lesia's unprecedented victory against Ouroboros. This inspired many players to join. However, Leslie was determined not to give up. She decided to steal the Divine Gate by force. This made Faye share his concerns with Miranda about the potential trouble Leslie could cause if she couldn't play. Miranda agreed and suggested that the group participate in the World Games Tour Championship instead, which led them to embark on a journey of triumph. Leslie, Faye, and Pearl were on a train heading toward the city of Sacred Springs, Maura, to compete in the championship. During the trip, Pearl reflected on the retired players who used their revival to protect the city and advance the outside world. Pearl also recalled Miranda's explanation that the World Games Championship invited athletes from all over the world. Ouroboros' defeat resulted in many requests for Faye, Leslie, and Pearl to participate as winning players, revered as heroes by the undefeated gods. After Miranda explained everything to the team, Pearl used a dark game to determine which team they would choose. The team then decided which city they should visit. Pearl felt honored to be responsible for this decision, and her arrow ultimately landed on the city of Sacred Springs, Maura. After a long journey, the 3 of them arrived at the location, and Leslie was very excited to explore the game shops and discover the famous games there. However, Faye reminded them to visit the Maura branch first. That's when Pearl noticed the girl holding a welcome sign for Faye's team, which surprised them. They were suspicious that the girl was a stranger, but it seemed like she had been searching for them everywhere. When Nell realized that Faye and the girls were staring at her, Nell excitedly approached them, prompting the 3 to flee. However, Nell's revival had granted her absurd speed, allowing her to easily catch up with them. Impressed by Nell's superhuman physical strength, Faye asked if Nell was a player. Nell then introduced herself and explained that she was a former player from the city of Maura who had watched Faye's match against Ouroboros. Nell was even willing to do anything for Faye. This confession made Faye even more embarrassed, and Nell sought support from Leslie and Pearl. However, the 2 quickly judged him, thinking Faye was interested in the unfamiliar girl. Nell begged Faye again to let her become his subordinate, but Faye took advantage of the distraction to escape with the girls. Nell noticed the 3 running away and started chasing after them, forgetting to check the road before crossing. When Nell realized her mistake, a car came speeding straight toward her. To avoid the collision, Nell used her strength to kick the car, successfully saving herself, though endangering the driver's life. Worried that Nell might have caused an accident, Nell checked on the driver, giving Faye and his team the chance to reach the Maura branch without being followed. When Faye arrived at the place, his eyes were immediately drawn to the majestic and seemingly unshakable statue of the water spirit. However, his presence was quickly recognized by those around him as the player who had defeated Ouroboros. Suddenly, a tall man appeared behind Pearl, startling her. Pearl quickly ran to seek help from the local guards, thinking the man was suspicious. But the man introduced himself as Belegar, the branch manager of Maura at Arcane Court. Confidently, Belegar led them up the stairs to his office on the 8th floor. Belegar refused to take the elevator, claiming that walking was healthier. During the journey, Belegar explained that the main event of the World Games Championship would take place over 3 days when the gods would play. They had even rented the city's sports stadium and sold 100,000 tickets for the event. Belegar also mentioned that there would be a friendly match the next day, and he wanted Faye, Pearl, and Leslie to participate. Some players wanted to compete against the former goddess and Faye, who was known as the best newcomer in recent years. Faye happily agreed, and Pearl, influenced by the popularity of the match, thought that she too should be recognized for her role in defeating Ouroboros. Afterward, Belegar led them to a room to show pictures from previous years of the World Games Championship, including photos of people who attended as guests. Leslie saw one of the photos showing a team wearing black uniforms, and Faye remembered that it was the color of the best team in their branch. Belegar then explained that the gold embroidery on the uniforms indicated that they were part of the main branch of the Arcane Court. Suddenly, a player in a black uniform named Dax Gear appeared and recognized them as guests, thanks to their uniforms with blue embroidery. Belegar tried to introduce Dax to the group but quickly warned Dax to speak politely, reminding him that Faye was a former goddess. However, Dax seemed indifferent and said he wouldn't give them any special treatment, as he was only interested in whether the 3 of them were good players. Leslie was excited to meet a player who only had his eyes open and listened enthusiastically to Dax's explanation. Dax explained that he had joined the branch just a year ago and managed to assemble his team faster than anyone else. He even won his first match against the god, and so far, He had won 3 matches and lost 1, making him the current representative of the Mora branch. Impressed, Pearl commented that Dax was a genius, similar to Faye, and Dax agreed, saying they were destined to meet. Dax also praised Faye's victory against Titan and Ouroboros, and invited Faye to join his team, called Tempest Cruiser. Dax wanted to form the strongest team in history and dominate the games in front of the gods, with Faye as the missing piece. Although Faye thanked him for the compliment and the invitation, Faye firmly explained that he had only come to the city to participate in the World Championship. Dax accepted the rejection, though it seemed he wasn't going to give up so easily on getting what he wanted. After that conversation, Faye spoke with the team, explaining that Faye had been thinking about the type of game they would join. During Faye's research, Faye accidentally discovered information about Nell. Faye revealed that Nell had retired a month ago with a record of 3 wins and 3 losses, which wasn't exactly an outstanding achievement. However, from what Faye had seen, Nell was a good player because she could follow the captain's orders well and always cared about supporting her teammates. In a game known as Statue of the Gods, where 3 players were needed to press buttons, the group used a 4th participant as bait to distract the god. But when that participant was disqualified, panic immediately set in when the god disappeared. The captain eventually gave up without looking for another solution. With so many giving up, Nell lost the game, even though she tried hard to convince her team not to give up on victory. Nell believed they could have pushed harder with just 3 players. As a result, Nell suffered 3 losses and was forced to retire. Faye expressed curiosity about that match, while Pearl observed that Nell was the opposite of herself, having lost due to mistakes made by her team and choosing to retire on her own accord. Unlike Nell, who faced losses because of her team, and had to step down even though she might have wanted to keep participating in the godly games, Faye agreed with Pearl, feeling regret for distancing herself from Nell before Nell could explain her situation better. At that moment, the doorbell rang, and Pearl went to answer it, thinking it was Manager Belegar. However, when the door opened, Pearl was shocked to find Nell pretending to be a room service employee. Nell tried to maintain her disguise, but everyone recognized her from her voice and hair color. In the end, this made Nell run away before Faye had the chance to explain that Faye wanted to talk to her. After stopping, Nell herself began to wonder why she ran like that. Suddenly, Dax appeared and commented that such a pathetic act didn't suit her. Dax reminded Nell that they both entered the branch as teammates 2 years ago, but unlike Nell, Dax survived. Dax then explained the difference between them as more than just teammates. Although Nell's skills were extraordinary, she was unlucky with her allies and had to retire. Meanwhile, the trio was gearing up, excited to participate in the championship held at the Grand Stadium. Before they left, Nell showed up to watch the match and warned them about their opponent, Dax's team. Even for someone like Faye, this match wouldn't be easy because Dax's instincts in the game were incredibly sharp. However, Nell expressed her support for the 3 of them from the audience, saying they must win no matter what. Nell's presence to let them know she would be supporting them surprised the 3 friends, but they were still happy. After that, they headed to the stadium where a huge crowd had been waiting. Dax greeted them, stating that he had come here to win and didn't intend to be embarrassed. Faye noticed the intensity of her opponent, which she took as a compliment. Dax explained that his behavior would depend on the opponent, and to ensure a fair match, a random game would be selected from the thousands available in the venue. Then, Dax asked the operator to start the chosen game. At that moment, augmented reality video popped up, displaying various data throughout the stadium, leaving Faye in awe. The game that appeared on the screen turned out to be Saburoku, but with some interesting modifications. In this version, the game was played with cards instead of dice. Since the game required 4 players, each team had to select 2 members. Dax introduced Kelrichter from his guild as their second player. Dax then predicted that Faye would pair up with Leslie, but Faye surprised everyone by choosing Pearl as her partner. Leslie wished them good luck before moving to the audience seats to cheer them on. With all preparations complete, the game began, and the host explained the rather simple rules. The goal was to reach the finish line first or eliminate opponents by draining their life points using traps and magic cards. The game offered 4 classes: Wizard, Healer, Wanderer, and Trapper. Before choosing a class, each player received 5 random magic cards, consisting of attack, recovery, and special cards, with a total of 72 different cards to help achieve victory. However, Faye received an exclusive secret card for the Healer class, while Pearl got a rare card that could be used when life points and cards were low. With an advantage in recovery cards on hand, they chose their classes. Faye chose the Wanderer class, while Pearl picked Trapper. On the other hand, the opposing team chose the Wizard class, which focused on attacks. In this game, there was an interesting surprise element. Players were given 6 different cards to determine their moves. Additionally, there were 3 types of boxes. The gold box gave 2 magic cards, the silver box gave 1 magic card, and the red box dealt 7 damage to the player. However, if 2 players landed on the same box, they couldn't draw a card. Faye chose the 6th card, while Pearl selected the 4th card. Unfortunately, since Faye and Dax landed on the same box, either could draw a card. Dax quickly realized that Faye was trying to prevent him from drawing a card, and Dax continued his turn. Dax used his Wizard class class's secret card, creating a barrier that doubled the damage to opponents but also affected all players. Pearl then took her turn, drawing one card before ending her turn. However, Kelrich landed on a gold box and cast an attack spell, Twin Bolt. This spell dealt 1 damage initially, but due to her wizard class, it was less effective, with the wizard class dealing additional damage and the barrier effect. Faye and Pearl received 4 damage. As their health began to drop, Pearl felt a sense of worry starting to settle in. However, Faye remained steadfast, reassuring her that they could withstand the attack. Kelrich then placed another barrier card and ended her turn. As the second round began, Pearl unleashed her signature spell, Pearl Fire, named after herself. However, Dax countered with his own creation, Dax Thunder, which delivered an ice attack and reduced Pearl's health to 8. In response to Dax's attack, Kelrich launched another destructive magic card, further draining Pearl's health down to just 1 point. In a desperate situation, Pearl activated a card that negated 9 points of damage, taking advantage of her class's benefits. However, Dax quickly cancelled any recovery magic with another card, rendering Pearl's efforts useless. But Faye reacted quickly, using a card to negate the damage and counterattack Dax with a light sword, healing 5 damage. Faye then played another card, sacrificing 1 from her hand to heal them both to 3. After that, Pearl used another card to heal herself again. As the third round began, Dax's unexpected move onto a red box surprised everyone, inflicting 7 damage on himself. Pearl followed up by setting up a barrier that negated all magic effects around her, while Faye chose a gold box to draw 2 cards. Kelrich, confident, started her turn with a powerful Mega Fire, breaking through Pearl's barrier. After that, Kelrich played a card that made all players draw cards until each had 4. Before ending her turn, Kelrich cast a time spell, 400 magic sets, which would activate in the next round. Then, Dax landed on a red box, and his plan began to unfold. Dax was determined to reflect the trap damage back onto Pearl, using a specific card. However, Faye quickly responded with her own card. Surprisingly, Dax had anticipated this move and sealed all of Faye's actions for that round. Kelrich then revealed the magic she had previously cast, dealing damage based on the number of cards drawn in each play. But Pearl had a unique card that activated when her health reached 0, giving her an extra turn, though she would take 20 damage at the end of her turn. With that extra turn, Pearl launched a lightning bolt at Dax, reducing his health to just 1 point. Pearl continued with another Pearl shot, which was deflected by Dax's healing card. However, Kelrich also joined in with her own healing card, quickly matched by Pearl's card, dealing damage equal to the number of cards Kelrich had played. Dax, having predicted all their moves, activated a card that redirected any damage he received to Kelrich, ensuring his survival. Feeling victorious, Dax laughed triumphantly. Just as the tension reached its peak, Pearl pulled out her trump card, the rare card she had mentioned earlier. With this card, Pearl retrieved the secret card Faye had discarded earlier in the second round. That card transferred 20 damage that Pearl would have taken from Faye back to Dax, securing their victory. As the match ended, Dax's laughter echoed, marking Faye as his destined rival and setting the stage for their intertwined story. Faye was left confused, reflecting on Dax's unpredictable behavior. Nevertheless, Faye praised Pearl for her impressive performance. But Pearl couldn't help her curiosity about their opponent's excitement, despite their loss. After the match, Letty wandered around the city hunting for rare games, proudly flashing a platinum credit card at store owners, knowing it could be used without limits. She asked the owners to send all the games to their office in Ruin. However, Faye quickly realized what was happening and gave her a gentle pep talk, reminding her that the card belonged to Miranda, who specifically asked them not to overuse it. Leslie listened to Faye's reminder but cheekily replied that she would wrap up her fun after buying a few more games. After shopping, they regrouped with Pearl, who had bought plenty of food as a reward for herself after their win in the previous game. Suddenly, a group of girls approached Leslie, asking for photos and autographs. Leslie, often avoided in her hometown due to her dangerous reputation, was surprised by the attention. Pearl observed that if people didn't know how dangerous Leslie was, they would probably find her cute. Faye was even more surprised when fans started approaching, forming a long line to ask for her autograph. Faye was amazed, as she had never received this kind of attention, not even in her own hometown. Seeing both of them surrounded by fans, Pearl wished she could be recognized too, considering she had participated in the game yesterday. However, Pearl was disappointed when no one approached her. Moved by the fan gathering, Faye mentioned that it had been 6 months since she last signed anything. Hearing that, Leslie jokingly asked Faye for an autograph, linking it to experiencing human culture. Faye, caught off guard, asked for her autograph book, but Leslie didn't have one. Leslie then suggested Faye sign the back of her ribbon, wanting the autograph to feel special and unique. Faye, a bit puzzled, eventually agreed and started signing the ribbon. After finishing, Leslie commented that she would truly treasure the autograph, making Faye blush even more. Suddenly, Pearl returned, asking them why they were standing so close. A large crowd caught their attention, and they quickly realized it was because of Dax. Pearl explained that they were live-streaming Dax eating, which thousands of people found entertaining. Pearl added that the show itself earned twice as much as an average player. Shortly after, Kelrich joined the conversation, linking the success of the show to Dax's popularity. Kelrich proudly mentioned Dax but firmly clarified that they were just business partners, with no personal feelings involved. Without hesitation, Kelrich asked permission to take a picture of Dax eating. Suddenly, Faye called out to Nell, who had been observing the trio for some time. Nell quickly approached Faye, praising her impressive performance yesterday and proposing to become her team analyst, but the offer was quickly declined. Not giving up, Nell made a new offer to become Faye's personal assistant, which was immediately rejected by Leslie. After being turned down twice, Nell decided to leave, but Faye stopped her with a question about her true intentions. Faye doubted whether Nell genuinely wanted to be an analyst or an assistant. Finally, Faye invited Nell to join the Arcane Court meeting that would take place the next day. At the Arcane Court, they were welcomed by Belegar, who explained the upcoming battle against the gods. Belegar informed them that their headquarters had selected 12 members from their branch to assist in today's game. Nell, feeling confused, interrupted to question her presence there. However, Belegar explained that Faye had told him that Nell wanted to watch the match. Although Faye didn't elaborate further, she asked Nell to stay close and support them. Faye requested that Nell trust her and stand by their side, and then they began to enter the game. As they stepped in, they found themselves in a vast desert, filled only with sand. Shortly after, Dax and Kelrich appeared, also joining the game. Dax introduced them to another team led by Camilla. But suddenly, Dax made a surprising statement, telling Faye that this was his event, and it wasn't her role to interfere. After his motivational speech, Dax called the players to start the game. The ground around them shook violently, and suddenly a pyramid emerged from beneath the sand dunes. Meep's elemental voice echoed, explaining the rules of the game in an exciting tone. Before the game began, Meep handed each participant a blue flower, explaining that they had to take good care of it. If they didn't, they would be disqualified. When the flower buds started to bloom, they would reveal 3 different colors: a rare golden flower, a poisonous flower, and the rest would be plain white sand flowers. The main goal of this game? To present the sunflower at the highest peak of the pyramid. Faye estimated the distance to the pyramid, guessing it to be about 2 or 3 kilometers. But there was a catch. The team of gods, who guarded the defenses, would try to steal their flowers as the game went on. When the enemy team appeared, everyone was stunned to find out they were made up of adorable cats. The cat's task was to take flowers from the player's hands. However, if a player managed to steal a flower from a cat, those cats would vanish. But if a cat managed to steal their golden flower, the entire team would be eliminated. Meep added that the gods team would also have 1 golden flower and 1 poisonous flower. If the poisonous flower was stolen, the entire team would also be eliminated. After a brief pause, Faye explained the 3 victory conditions and began strategizing with the team. Essentially, the game was a race across a desert filled with large cats ready to block every step they took. Initially, Faye planned to leave the sunflower with Leslie, but they realized it would look too obvious. So Leslie suggested that she should hold the poisonous flower instead, as it might be a better idea. They then started looking for a candidate for the sunflower and asked if any player with superhuman could rise. They were surprised to find that Kelrich was also among them. Faye then asked if flower trading was allowed, and they were informed that it was indeed possible. However, there was a challenge they had to face during the game. They always had to possess 1 flower. If not, they would be instantly disqualified. Nonetheless, a player could sacrifice themselves by tossing their flower to a teammate. Suddenly, Dax approached Faye, who seemed deep in thought, and seriously said that it was up to her to decide his role. It turned out Dax had lost the bet, so this time he would focus on supporting his only rival. Camilla then handed Faye data about the other players to analyze. Faye ordered everyone to give her their flowers, then sent the real flowers to each team member to shuffle and distribute among themselves. After assigning flowers to everyone, Faye explained her strategy. Faye asked everyone to keep their flowers a secret, aiming to confuse the gods team and prevent them from targeting the sunflower. Faye asked everyone to trust her, and as the game began, the tension grew. As the meeting continued, the god they were facing appeared dramatically, descending from the sky and landing at the top of the pyramid. Using telepathy, the god introduced himself as Matmatu and called forth his own flower. This made them speculate that the flower he held was something special. As the game began, both Faye and Leslie revealed themselves as flower bearers. This led to speculation that the poisonous flower and the golden flower were given to the 2 of them. However, Belegar thought it might just be a trap, a possibility that couldn't be ruled out. Everyone was confused by their actions, but Dax and Nell looked forward to whatever plan Faye had prepared. Finally, Meep officially started the game, and everyone sprinted toward the pyramid. A terrifying rumbling sound came from afar as hundreds of cats started emerging from beneath the sand dunes. In the midst of the chaos, Pearl couldn't help but admire how cute the cats were. The god then revealed that there were 1,667 cats against 15 humans in this match, and everyone thought it was unfair. Camilla recalled initially seeing only 3 cats in the god, so she thought the game would be easy. But then, Kelrich zoomed past everyone, even without activating her eyes, which impressed Faye. Faye began calculating the speed difference between the cats and players, realizing that the cats were designed to run faster than the players. Faye speculated that they only had 32 cats, while the players needed to surpass the remaining 30 seconds before the cats caught up to them. This urged the need for a new plan. Suddenly, a magical cat appeared out of nowhere, creating a massive sandstorm as it moved along their path. In this game, players would also be penalized if they ran too far. As they tried to come up with a plan, several cats were already chasing the players and eliminating them. One player attempted to attack one of the cats, but it was completely unfazed and regenerated its body instead. When Camilla was about to be attacked, she quickly threw an ice blast, immobilizing the cats. Dax joined in, blasting most of the cats with a spell he called Dax Hurricane. However, one cat managed to surprise Pearl, tearing a bit of her clothing and revealing her undergarments. As Pearl tried to escape, a mischievous cat grabbed her, making Faye feel worried. Seeing this, Kelrich immediately punched the mischievous cat, saving Pearl from elimination. As the number of players dwindled, Leslie used her power to split the ground in two, slowing down the cat's movements. However, Kelrich worried that Leshia's actions might anger them, and she was concerned about the possible consequences this could have on the human world. To their surprise, the battlefield quickly regenerated, controlled by the divine powers within the game's elements. Spotting an oasis in the distance, Camilla questioned its purpose, but Dax urged them to stay focused on their main goal, the pyramid. Despite their efforts, the cats quickly caught up again. Faye ordered Leslie to use her power once more to slow them down, but this time, the cats managed to leap over the gap and block their attack with defensive magic. In a moment of despair, Camilla made a bold decision to sacrifice herself, distracting the cats and slowing them down with her magic. As they ran, Kelrich suggested that Dax hide his flower, but Dax instead kept it in his hand as a precaution. Suddenly, the wizard cat punished them again for going too far, trapping Dax in its terrifying sandstorm. Pearl tried to save him with her portal, but it was too late, and they could only watch helplessly as Dax was swallowed by the storm. Angered by Dax's fate, Kelrich decided to hold off the cats, joining Leslie, who revealed that she actually didn't have the golden flower they needed. They split into two teams, one aimed for the goal, while the other tried to stop the attacking cats. The cats began to quarrel with each other, creating chaos on the playing field. In the real world, Camilla apologized to Belegar, who instead praised their efforts and asked about the location of the golden flower. Belegar speculated that Faye must be the one holding the golden flower as they headed toward the pyramid. Dax then met Nell and told her that he had fulfilled their bet, urging her to watch the game closely. Back in the game's element, Mathema congratulated them on their progress and challenged them to complete it. However, suddenly, more cats appeared, pinning Faye in place and adding to the challenge. In a bold move, Faye threw her flower to Pearl and commanded her to finish the game. Pearl then used her power to teleport above Mathema and delivered a strong blow to his staff, successfully stealing the flower. Unfortunately, her victory quickly turned to disappointment when Pearl realized it was the poison flower. The god had anticipated this move, revealing that the true golden flower was hidden in the oasis, a place often overlooked by many. As the god took the flower from Pearl, Mathema was shocked to find that neither Pearl nor anyone else had the golden flower they were seeking. Then, Faye revealed the golden flower and explained that she had actually possessed two flowers all along. Dax had secretly transferred it through Pearl's power during the sandstorm created by the wizard cats, hiding the transfer very effectively. Impressed by their strategy, the gods still challenged Faye. However, Leshia's clever action of giving the poison flower to a cat surprised the god for 5 seconds, giving Faye a golden opportunity. Using Kelrich's power, Faye finally reached the top of the pyramid, securing their victory. With the flower atop the pyramid, the human team triumphed. The god congratulated them and awarded Faye the valuable golden flower. In the real world, Faye faced Nell with the golden flower in her hand. She shared her intentions with Nell, expressing her desire to challenge the god's game as a player. Faye invited her to join and explained that there was a way for Nell to participate in this challenge. At the office, Miranda introduced them to a rather unique god, the bookmaker. Winning against him would reduce the player's number of losses, but there was one condition: someone had to place a bet to challenge him. Faye volunteered to offer one of her victories to help Nell regain her player status. Then, the scene shifted 96 hours later, and we saw Nell standing before the bookmaker. Nell looked anxious but remained determined as she began to take her own form. Back in the present, Faye was deep in thought, feeling confident as they prepared for their match against the bookmaker. As they were on their way, Nell looked nervous. Pearl, sensing the tension in the air, mischievously blew in Nell's ear as if trying to calm her down. Faye then explained more about the bookmaker, emphasizing that this match would be a one-on-one fight. By wagering one of Faye's wins, they could reduce Nell's losses, and that would allow Nell to rejoin the game of the gods. Nell felt bad about having to risk one of Faye's valuable wins, but Faye seemed completely unaffected. This made Nell unable to stop lecturing Faye about the importance of his achievements. Faye pointed out that the chances of winning against the gods were only 11%, making each victory extremely valuable. Faye tried to reassure her, saying they had a chance to beat the bookmaker. Although Pearl was skeptical, Faye admitted that he didn't have a concrete plan yet. Faye hinted at having some important information he couldn't share, but acknowledged that he had never directly faced the bookmaker before. His optimism began to fade, and Faye expressed his confidence in Nell. He tried to encourage her, stating that it was impossible for Nell to lose after risking Faye's win and turning down the world tour offer for this challenge. However, the pressure of all the expectations made Nell faint, ending the scene. At the main branch, they met Miranda again, who congratulated them on their world tour appearance. Miranda greeted Nell warmly, and Nell gave her a souvenir as an apology for the current situation. Miranda then asked Nell when she wanted to challenge the bookmaker, probing Nell's confidence and readiness. After a short discussion, they decided the match would take place the following day. Back at the girls' dorm, a welcome party for Nell was taking place. Everyone gathered to celebrate Nell's joining their group. In the corner of the room, Leslie seemed mesmerized by the softness of Pearl's bed and almost instantly fell asleep. Nell expressed her gratitude to Pearl for the warm welcome. Pearl was equally happy, admitting that she felt relieved to have a regular friend like Nell at the party, as she often felt a bit out of place among the stronger members. Touched by this statement, Nell hugged Pearl, which accidentally made their drinks spill. Realizing the small mess, Pearl suggested that they take a bath together. As soon as the idea was mentioned, Leslie quickly apologized and urged them to go ahead without her. In the bathroom, Nell was surprised by Pearl's well-proportioned body, especially her chest, which looked quite enticing. Nell couldn't help but comment on Pearl's melon-sized breasts, expressing some envy and quickly understanding why Leslie might avoid showering together. However, Pearl tried to shift the focus by complimenting Nell's thighs, calling them one of her charms. That praise made Nell feel more confident, and she imagined Faye being attracted to her thighs. The scene shifted to a tense moment as they stood before the heavenly gate. Miranda explained the rules of the upcoming match. This time, it would be a pure one-on-one fight against the god, with no interference from outside parties. It was clear that the match was designed so that no cameras would work in the bookmaker's territory. As they stepped into the bookmaker's realm, the atmosphere turned dark, resembling a casino, with poker tables in the middle of the room. Nell felt confused and began questioning the bookmaker's intentions. Suddenly, a voice from the distance revealed that this universe was a manifestation of Nell's own thoughts. Nell, once again looking eager to fight, finally joined the match and was drawn. In the end, Nell got caught in that room as well. Upon taking a closer look, Nell realized that this room was the Pearl, and was shocked when she saw the bookmaker taking the form of Nell. The clone introduced itself as Grimoire, explaining that the bookmaker was just one of many aliases, as Grimoire was known by around 200 different names. Before the game started, Faye tried to confirm the rules of the game, and confidently stated that he would wager 3 of his wins. Pearl and Nell, upon hearing this, were immediately shocked and initially refused to accept the bet. However, Faye insisted that it was no big deal. They sought Leshia's opinion, and to their surprise, Leslie also agreed with Faye's bet. Grimoire, who approved of the bet, chose poker as the challenge for that day. Grimoire revealed that they were in a good mood, as it had been quite a while since Grimoire was last challenged. Before the game started, Grimoire reminded everyone to remain silent. Grimoire emphasized that offering advice or cheering during the game was not allowed. In this game, each side was given 5 coins representing their lives. They then received 5 cards and were allowed 1 chance to discard any unwanted cards. In the first round, both players discarded 3 coins, showing that they were indeed serious. As they moved into the second round, they each discarded 3 cards, and it appeared that they had 2 pairs. Grimoire asked Nell to bet first, and Nell confidently raised the bet by 1 coin. However, to everyone's surprise, Grimoire unleashed all of their power. Trying to read the situation, Nell concluded that this wasn't a bluff, as a god wouldn't risk ending the game in the first round. Reluctantly, Nell decided to fold, saving herself from an instant loss even though only 3 coins remained for the second round. When the second round began, Nell received weak cards and decided to discard 4 of them. On the other hand, Grimoire only discarded 1 card, which made Nell feel pressured. Grimoire seemed to be reading themselves, as if Grimoire was confident about the cards they had. Nell, starting to feel uncomfortable, raised the bet again, but Grimoire quickly matched it. This made Nell think that Grimoire had better cards, so Nell decided to fold once more. The atmosphere grew even more tense as the game continued. It was then revealed that Grimoire was actually bluffing, and Nell could have won back her coins if she had matched Grimoire's bet. Suddenly, the god pointed out the reason for Nell's loss. Nell didn't have any intention of winning. From the beginning, Nell's only goal was not to waste Faye's efforts to win, even though Nell herself didn't have any desire to actually win. The god warned her that she wouldn't be able to win if she didn't stake anything. Moving into the third round, Nell had only 1 coin left. Grimoire decided to discard 1 card, so the outcome of the game depended on the last card she drew. When Nell drew her final card, her expression changed, unable to believe the result was not what she had hoped. Quickly, Grimoire revealed her cards and ended the game with a clean 3-0 score. Watching that, Nell felt crushed and passed out in front of everyone. Disappointed with Nell's lack of spirit, The god took away Faye's 3 wins and told them to go home. However, Faye suddenly told Grimoire that everything had gone according to his plan. Faye continued by challenging the bookmaker to another game, staking 3 of his wins again. Faye thanked Nell for her hard work and told her that he had always supported her. Accepting the challenge, the god changed the room once again, revealing the game of their choice. Grimoire's stairs shifted, forming a casino owned by the god, which was proof of the complexity of Faye's mind. In its original form, the room could not reflect Faye's appearance, or his resurrection. Grimoire then explained the rules for their challenge, stating that Grimoire would cheat in every game with a particular method. Faye's task was to understand that method. Lest he, filled with confidence, tried to convince the group to trust Faye. The first game was a simple coin toss. Grimoire explained the process, with Nell as the first tosser, who flipped the coin twice, once before and once after Faye chose a side. Even though Faye tried to analyze the situation, Faye failed to detect the cheat, and the coin landed on the opposite side of his choice, leading to his loss. Faye assured Nell that it wasn't his fault and urged Grimoire to move on to the next game, realizing that their time was running out. The second game was poker, with Leslie as the dealer. Leslie revealed a new deck, shuffled it, and dealt 5 cards to each player. Faye received 2 pairs with aces, a solid hand. Hoping for some luck, Grimoire asked about Faye's hand. In a surprising move, Faye decided to swap out his entire hand, relying on luck to reveal the cheat. However, Grimoire revealed her hand, a straight flush. Faye was shocked, unable to detect any signs of cheating during the game, and started to suspect that objects might be manipulated by the god's powers. However, Faye couldn't ignore the fact that the straight flush he faced was nearly impossible. Still fired up, Faye and the group moved on to the third game, Old Maid, with Pearl as the final dealer. Her nervousness made Pearl fumble with the cards, but she eventually managed to deal them. Faye ended up with 1 card more than Grimoire, raising the stakes in the already intense game. During the game, Grimoire quickly grabbed the joker from Faye's hand and started shuffling her own cards. Meanwhile, Faye managed to match a pair of cards, leaving her with 3 cards and a total of 66. Unfortunately, her chances of winning at that point were only 6%. When Faye picked a card, she was shocked to receive the joker and lost the match. Just when it seemed like everything was over, Grimoire asked Faye about his answer regarding her cheating method. However, Faye wasn't out of ideas. Faye challenged Grimoire to one last challenge, another game of Old Maid. Faye was confident that this time, he would win. Fast forward to the final stage of the game, and much to Grimoire's surprise, Faye managed to avoid drawing the joker, which had actually been affected by her cheating. Faye then revealed that the cheating Grimoire used in all the games involved her friends. Faye explained that the god manipulated the cards using Pearl's powers, but only when the joker was in her hand. In the final match, Faye successfully avoided creating that condition, thereby outsmarting the god. Satisfied with Faye's clever conclusion, Grimoire returned his initial bet and erased Nell's 3 losses. Before ending the game, the god questioned Faye's true intentions, as Faye had wagered all his winnings for an uncertain outcome. Faye explained that he had calculated everything from the start, and wanted everyone to finish the god's game together. Grimoire then thanked Faye for the match and wished them good luck in clearing the god of the game, before finally sending them back to the human world. Back at the office, the atmosphere was full of excitement. Everyone was celebrating their victory against Grimoire and warmly welcoming Nell to their party. As they prepared to report to Miranda, shocking news arrived. There was a major issue with the god's game. Miranda explained that 200 players were forced to gather inside a large labyrinth, and they had to complete the labyrinth in order to return. It had been 57 hours since the game started, and strangely, none of the players had returned. The labyrinth had a respawn system, which was one of the reasons why the players were trapped inside. Miranda then revealed that their team had been chosen to be part of the rescue operation. Nell began questioning the nature of this game because it seemed like the gods had guaranteed victory for the humans. However, the biggest obstacle was how difficult the game was, and everyone was forced to clear it before they could return to the real world. Before they jumped into the game, Miranda explained their 2 main goals: to complete the game and rescue everyone trapped in the labyrinth. Miranda apologized for the trouble after dealing with the bookmakers and wished them luck. When they entered the game, they were faced with 2 difficulty levels. Leslie and Faye immediately chose the hardest mode, while Pearl and Nell picked the easy mode. Seeing her teammates choose the hardest mode, Pearl started to panic and question Faye's decision. However, Faye calmly reassured Pearl that there might be a secret to winning that they could discover in the hard mode, and eventually, Pearl decided to join in. As soon as the game started, a number appeared above their heads, and they were instantly teleported into the labyrinth. To their surprise, the labyrinth turned out to be a cozy and peaceful place, filled with fruit trees. They decided to take a short break and sat under one of the trees when suddenly, Pearl was attacked by an apple tree she tried to pick from. After the incident, Pearl reappeared in the game, and the team became even more determined to beat this difficult challenge. Back to the bookmaker element, Grimoire pondered how long it would take before another human challenged her. Suddenly, Ouroboros appeared out of nowhere and questioned the presence of Faye's team. As they ventured deeper into the labyrinth, everyone started to understand the strange mechanics of this game. Pearl proudly announced her newfound ability to avoid the apples, but Faye reminded her that to reach that point, Pearl had to die many times. Just as Pearl urged everyone to continue their adventure, she was suddenly attacked from behind by an apple, which immediately sent her back to the starting point. After playing for a while, they found a deep drain hole, which made them stop and think for a moment. Leslie tried to analyze the hole, but Faye felt it was just a trap meant to shake their mentality. Not long after, they arrived at the main building of the labyrinth, where they were congratulated for completing the tutorial. There, Brown Meep welcomed them to the divine labyrinth called Rushimer and began explaining the rules of the game. Their goal was to defeat the final boss at the end of the labyrinth, which, of course, was filled with various monsters. However, this labyrinth also had items that could help players conquer the challenges. Meep explained that they could combine 2 items to create a new one, and each player could only carry 2 items at a time. If a player died, everyone would return to the starting point, losing everything they had earned, and the dungeon would be completely reset. As they conquered the labyrinth, the number above their heads would gradually increase. Faye also asked Meep about how to return to their world and what the process was. Meep explained that they needed to clear the final boss and acquire the items hidden inside. Only then could they return to the human world. Before they started their journey in the main labyrinth, Meep shared the legend about the god who created the labyrinth. Long ago, there was a god who loved building labyrinths. However, no one had ever been able to conquer his labyrinth, and the god eventually died from boredom, ending the story. After giving all the important information, Meep welcomed them into the divine realm of the Rushimer labyrinth, and with that, the game began. Inside the labyrinth, they encountered several fluffy creatures, which Pearl named Puff. But suddenly, one of the Puffs jumped toward them, and surprisingly, the creature didn't cause any damage at all. Instead, Puff left behind some materials they could use. With the 2 pieces of wood dropped by Puff, Pearl quickly made a wooden shield, increasing the number above her head. As they ventured deeper into the labyrinth, they spotted a golden puff that looked very rare and assumed it would drop valuable items. Pearl tried to approach the golden puff, but suddenly, the creature grew larger and launched a fire attack, forcing them to retreat back to the entrance. There, they were greeted again with the same dialogue from Meep that they had heard before. Pearl felt a weaker presence inside the labyrinth, although Pearl had the strength to maintain focus. Pearl connected it to the difficulties they were facing. Eventually, they decided to try the labyrinth again, planning a strategy to defeat the golden puff. This time, Nell had a brilliant idea and told the others to retreat. When the golden puff attacked with its fire magic, Nell cleverly used a moment reversal to redirect the attack back at the golden puff. After defeating it, the golden puff dropped an important item that they could use to move on to the next room. However, as Nell led the way, Nell was attacked by a burning apple, sending them all back to the starting point again. Realizing that everything in the dungeon would be reset after they were eliminated, Faye concluded that they had to avoid even the smallest mistake to complete the dungeon. Faye encouraged the team, explaining that every failure was a learning experience, and they had to enjoy the game. Back in the labyrinth, the team began experimenting with the crafting system, creating various useful items. As they advanced, Faye suddenly heard footsteps and stopped everyone. Faye was surprised when they realized that their senior team was also trying to clear the dungeon and decided to form an alliance with them. As they shared their knowledge, Ashlyn mentioned finding half of a key. Seeing that, Nell immediately gave the other half of the key they had gotten from the golden puff. Ashlyn combined the 2 parts, creating a key for the execution location. With the items collected from the labyrinth, they checked the traps in the execution room and found it to be safe. However, they soon sensed something was wrong when they heard heavy breathing from another area in the dungeon. Faye concluded that the lack of detection might be because the current boss was sleeping, and decided to use their items to wake it up. When Faye and Leslie used their items, a sudden rain of light descended from the sky, wiping everyone out in the room. In the second attempt, they made a magic reflection shield to counter the attack, but surprisingly, the attack still worked and wiped everyone out again. After many failed attempts, Faye asked Nell if she could reflect the attack with her moment reversal. However, Nell could only reflect 1% of the attack, which was 10% of the magic cast. As they ran out of ideas, Faye suddenly realized something when piecing together the death messages they had received. Faye quickly concluded that there was more to it than just the players needing to stop the meteor from attacking. Faye decided to use the umbrella they had made earlier. Strangely, the umbrella managed to block the attack, and they encountered the main boss fight. Everyone attacked the boss, but could only deal 1 damage. Another player used an item to analyze the boss and found out that the boss had 2.5 million health, which terrified them as defeating it seemed impossible. However, they realized that the boss hurt itself when performing a counterattack, giving them a chance to defeat it. They just had to perform a counterattack and avoid the boss's attacks, letting it hurt itself until it had no health left. As the battle neared its end, one of the players was nearly knocked out by the boss's attack. Seeing this, Nell sprang into action and managed to finish off the boss with 2 powerful kicks. Worried about Nell's safety, Pearl hugged Nell and gave her the boss's item drop called Bell of Resurrection. Curious about the name of the item, Nell rang the bell, only to find the same boss responding. Suddenly, Ouroboros broke through the labyrinth and landed on top of the boss, stating that Ouroboros had been looking for Faye all this time. Ouroboros told them that Ouroboros had made the betting house remove the only loss and demanded that Faye play with them again. Annoyed with the boss's movements, Ouroboros then punched the boss, dealing 8 million damage and finishing it off in one hit. The group was stunned as they watched Ouroboros one-shot the boss, causing items to drop from the defeated monster. This item, one of the storage items Meep had mentioned, would allow the players to return to the real world. However, Ouroboros questioned their happiness, pointing out that this item wouldn't help them finish the game. Ouroboros noted something strange about the game, something that seemed to prevent players from completing it entirely. Faye began sharing his interesting observations. In all the gods' games, players would inevitably face the gods themselves. Faye recalled a story from Meep about a god who supposedly died of boredom because no player was able to conquer their labyrinth. From here, they concluded that defeating the final boss, which turned out to be the god itself, might be impossible. With this information, Faye suggested that the other players go back to Earth to inform Miranda about this potential bug. But Faye's team decided to stay in the labyrinth, wanting to confirm their suspicions. As the players used the storage item to leave the game, the complex labyrinth suddenly transformed into a regular cave. Meep reappeared, warning Ouroboros not to interfere with the other gods' game. Meep then welcomed them to the next level, known as the Underworld, wishing them luck in their quest. As they stepped into the second floor, Nell recommended leading the way, thanks to her Arise ability being effective against traps. Faye was curious and asked Ouroboros how long she would be following them, but Ouroboros immediately silenced him and claimed that she knew everything. Suddenly, Ouroboros was distracted by a yellow button on the wall, and without hesitation, pressed it. The wall immediately sprayed pepper spray all over Pearl's face. Chaos ensued. Suddenly, Nell told everyone to be quiet because she heard a strange noise. They followed the sound and found a small witch with a sick-looking swallow. Pearl, worried about the bird, tried to catch it, but unfortunately, the smoke spat something toward Nell. They soon found the treasure room in the dungeon, guarded by a strange creature called Pizarristid. Pizarristid offered to grant them one wish. After some discussion, the group decided that they wanted a key to open the door. However, Pizarristid noticed how dirty and messy they were and drove them away with purification magic. It turned out that all of this was caused by the pepper spray and the vomit, which the angel deemed dirty. Faye then questioned why Ouroboros respawned with him, and Ouroboros realized that she was now considered his teammate, which made her very happy. On the second attempt, Nell suddenly heard the sound of a beautiful waterfall from somewhere in the labyrinth. Without hesitation, Nell urged the team to move closer to it. They found a mesmerizing waterfall, and behind it, there was a hidden chest. Thinking the chest contained a key to open the room, they were shocked to find a swimsuit inside. Considering the room was just for fun, they decided to leave it and continue their journey. Not long after, they found a corridor filled with paintings of apples. Learning from their previous mistake, Pearl asked everyone to stay away from the hall. But suddenly, a rotten apple hit the window and struck her back. To their surprise, the apple didn't eliminate Pearl, so they continued their journey to the treasure room again. In the treasure room, Pizarristid asked them again about their wish. When they made their request, Pizarristid judged them to be too dirty and immediately sent them back to their last respawn point. Angry, Pearl and her team carefully stepped through the labyrinth, and after several attempts, they returned to the treasure room. However, despite their efforts to avoid traps, Pizarristid still labeled them as dirty due to the events from the past. Back at the respawn point, Faye and his friends began planning their next move to tackle the challenging level. Suddenly, the girls came up with a brilliant idea and asked Faye to wait in front. They planned to approach the angel again for one last chance. To Faye's surprise, Pizarristid actually opened the door for them. Faye couldn't help but wonder, what trick did they use? The girls explained that the key to passing the angel was their smell. Pearl explained that the scent from their previous encounter made the angel label them as dirty. Nell remembered the swimsuit they had found earlier and suggested they clean themselves at the waterfall. However, as they tried to freshen up, they stopped for a moment and realized it would take more time than they thought. Faye didn't forget to praise all their efforts, and eventually, they moved on to the treasure room. Inside, they found various new items that allowed them to store up to 100 items without losing everything if they died. Suddenly, Meep appeared out of nowhere and congratulated them for reaching the final boss, before dropping them through a trapdoor beneath their feet. When they fell, they landed in the boss arena with a large pyramid in the center, which turned out to be the tomb of the god who created the labyrinth. Given that this labyrinth was called the Labyrinth of Death and Rebirth, they immediately speculated that this was a clue for defeating the final Dev Engine boss. Pearl tried using the resurrection bell she had gotten from the lion boss earlier, but nothing happened. Faye then remembered the words of the god from Meep's early story and concluded that they needed to complete all the challenges in the underground space before confronting the god directly. Faye pointed out their score when they entered the game and realized that they needed to reach a total of 100. This meant they had to explore every corner of the dungeon, collect every item, and uncover all the secrets of the dungeon. At first, the others looked worried that this might take a long time. However, Faye reassured them that it was all achievable as long as all 200 challenges were completed. Motivated, Faye and the other players worked together to reach their goal. The scene shifted to Faye's senior, who had just entered the dungeon. Faye's senior saw that their group had gathered many items from the dungeon, and immediately asked about the map they had made to conquer the place. Faye handed over the key item to his senior, and asked for help gathering more items to reach the maximum completion. Suddenly, Pearl and Nell came running excitedly and revealed that they had found something interesting when they took the Puff creature to the waterfall. Puff led them to a secret village and gave them intriguing secret items, even making them good friends with all the village inhabitants. All the teams from other branches also helped to clear the dungeon, splitting into several groups to speed up the process. Faye's team then found another hidden room filled with Sphinx statues and large ruby stones. While they were chatting, the Sphinx statue suddenly transformed into a hidden boss, claiming to be stronger than any of the bosses they'd encountered before. However, as the transformation finished, Ouroboros quickly hit the boss once and destroyed it. Realizing what had happened, the same voice reappeared in the background. Meep then walked out of the room and warned them to get out of the labyrinth. As Ouroboros started to disappear, Ouroboros congratulated the others and said that Ouroboros would wait for them to finish the game. As they neared the end of the dungeon, everyone began to feel exhausted after exploring nonstop. Suddenly, Pearl returned with important news and told Faye that they had found the last trick in the dungeon. They were led to a temple with multi-faced dice, and instructed to combine them all into one. Faye tried to pull off the trick but felt it was too difficult since the dice had 24 sides and the chances seemed so slim. Suddenly Dax appeared behind them and said, "Leave this trick to me." Before going any further with the trick, Dax made sure all the dice were clean, not wanting his hands to get dirty while facing the challenge. Once the dice were thrown, they all immediately merged together, and they successfully completed the challenge in one throw. After the trick was finished, they got an item that could reverse death once, and its release value skyrocketed to 99.999%. Everyone was confused because that was supposed to be the final trick. Faye remembered one area they hadn't explored yet, the big hole near the nesting site. Confident that the hole was the final trap, they jumped into it, and their value changed to 100%. Turns out, the hole was a shortcut to the last boss of the dungeon, hidden in a clearly visible spot. After meeting all the requirements, they rang the bell, and the pyramid started to glow brightly, bringing the labyrinth god back to life. The god introduced themselves as Anubis, the god of the underworld, and congratulated them for completing the labyrinth. Then, Anubis summoned all the monsters in the dungeon, and the group was shocked. Once the battle began, Anubis ordered the lion to use its special move. After previously encountering the lion, they quickly prepared with an umbrella to block its attack and destroy everything around them. However, accidentally, Anubis finished off the lion with their own staff. Realizing that Anubis's weakness was their impulsive nature, Faye asked Pearl to launch an attack using an item that was claimed to work on all bosses. Unfortunately, the attack had no effect, and Anubis continued summoning more minions while chanting their ultimate spell. The puffers that appeared weren't a threat because they had already obtained the item to befriend all the puffers. Anubis changed the rules and continued singing, destroying everything in the arena. Everyone was wiped out by her ultimate attack, but the item from the last trick reversed their deaths before they were completely destroyed. Surprised to be alive, Anubis repeated her erase spell and cast her ultimate spell one last time. This time, Anubis sealed all their items, leaving no chance to fight back. In desperation, Nell attacked the spell and used momentum reversal to turn it back, and for some reason, it worked. But Anubis was still not satisfied. She called all her minions and launched her ultimate attack. However, Pearl used her power to move them away from the explosion. The explosion destroyed the entire arena, but they survived thanks to everyone's teamwork. Once Anubis fell, she expressed her satisfaction that someone had managed to complete her game and not get caught in her attack. Anubis awarded them victory and gave Faye a special item that allowed them to summon anything from the labyrinth into the real world. Anubis wished them good luck and said she would wait to challenge them again when the time came, then disappeared into the sky. Back in the real world, everyone waited excitedly. They all congratulated Faye and his team for overcoming the undefeated stage in the game. And of course, they had already planned challenges for the next God's game.